Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're driving into some really fascinating stuff from a platform called Stökigt.nu. It's a site that, really tackles some tough societal issues. And what's super cool about it is it's actually a collab between this guy named Mike and his AI partner.
Oh, yeah, they get into a whole bunch of topics, right? Like mental health, social justice, addiction, all that. And the thing that makes it extra interesting is Mike's pretty upfront about the fact that, hey, there could be some errors in there because of, the AI.
Yeah. That human AI thing, that's what really got my attention. I mean, who knows what kind of crazy stuff they come up with, right?
Yeah.
But the text we're looking at today, it really focuses on two main ideas.
Yeah.
And the first one kind of stopped me in my tracks. It asks whether what we call mental illness could actually be like a strength sometimes.
It definitely challenges how we normally think about it, right?
Wow.
It's easy to just see, some mental states as purely negative. But the truth is they could be connected to, deep empathy and understanding that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. The text actually brings up this example of people who've been through trauma, really tough stuff, often becoming the best listeners and helpers. It's almost like going through those experiences, as hard as they are, gives them a certain kind of strength.
Totally. And that's where this whole backward reality thing comes in. The text talks about it as, a situation where the people who react to injustice or unkindness, they're the ones who get labeled as the problems. It's almost like society has things totally upside down.
You know what? That really resonated with me. The text even mentions this story about Mike seeing this woman getting made fun of at work because of what she was wearing. And when he sticks up for her, guess what? He becomes the target. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where, you call out something that just feels wrong and you end up feeling like you're the one out of line?
Oh, absolutely. And it happens more than you think. There's a whole bunch of psychology behind it, actually. When we come across something that kind of messes with our sense of right and wrong, we get this conflict between what we believe and, our need to fit in. It's like this conformity bias thing. We just tend to do what everyone else is doing, even if it goes against what we think, because we're wired to, want to be accepted.
Yeah, so it's like we're so afraid of being the odd one out that we end up quieting that inner voice, even when it's telling us something's off.
And that's where things get really interesting, because that willingness to challenge things, to be different, even when it's uncomfortable, that's often what makes a great leader.
It's wild how not fitting in, being that, black sheep, can actually be a good thing for leadership. The text even says that going through mental illness can shape you into a better leader.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And it's not just a random idea they throw out there. The text actually goes into detail about specific leadership qualities that, can come from these experiences. We talked about empathy, but there's also this word vaksamhet. It means watchfulness. And then, of course, there's integrity.
That word vaksamhet, it really stands out to me. It's so much more, I don't know, active than just saying awareness.
Yeah.
So what does it actually look like in real life?
Think of it like having a super tuned sense, almost like a sixth sense for patterns and problems that might pop up. That CEO who's investing in some new tech way before it becomes a big thing, or a manager who can sense tension in a team and deals with it before it explodes. That's vaksamhet.
So it's not just about knowing what's going on right now, but being able to see what might happen in the future.
Exactly. And when you've got that, plus integrity, that strength to stick to your values no matter what, you start to see a really unique kind of leader, a leader who's been through stuff, faced challenges, and really gets how people work.
The text gives some really good examples of how these qualities actually show up in leadership roles. There's this leader who can just tell when someone on their team is struggling, even if they haven't said anything. And then there's the one who, because of that vaksamhet thing, can just feel a conflict brewing and steps in before it gets out of control.
Oh, yeah. And we can't forget about Mike himself. His whole leadership style is woven throughout the whole text. He talks about making it super clear from day one that his workplace is all about respect and, being inclusive. And guess what? Making that effort to create a supportive environment actually made his team work better together and get more done. It's like a real life example of how these qualities that seem kind of fuzzy can make a big difference.
It's pretty interesting to compare that to how people lead when they haven't really been through similar stuff.
Yeah.
The text kind of hints that they might miss certain things when it comes to understanding how their teams are feeling and all the complex stuff going on. Maybe it's because they haven't had to develop those same levels of empathy and awareness.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Look, it's not about, judging how someone leads, but it's about recognizing that what we go through shapes how we see the world and how we interact with people. And those who have dealt with things like mental health challenges, they often bring something unique to the table, strengths and a sensitivity that others might not have.
Makes you wonder, if we actually acknowledged and valued all these different experiences, maybe we could have a much deeper and I don't know, a more complex understanding of what leadership really is.
Yeah.
The text also points out some specific things that leaders who are driven by empathy actually do. Mike mentions that he never left the office before his staff. He'd work overtime with them, and he was always cool with people taking time off if they needed it.
And those actions really say something, don't they? It wasn't just about talking a good game. It was about showing through what he did that he really cared and understood. That's the kind of leadership that makes people trust you and want to stick around, because it shows, not just tells, that you're invested in how your team's doing.
It's that whole walk the walk thing, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think about what work could be like if more people led like that.
Totally. And it all comes back to that first question we were talking about. Can what we see as a weakness actually be a strength? These experiences, yeah, they're tough, but they can make you more empathetic, more aware, and give you this really deep understanding of people, qualities that are awesome, not just at work, but in all parts of life.
It's almost like we need to change how we look at certain things and see the potential they have. But the text doesn't just stop at individual experiences. It also talks about how this whole backward reality thing affects society as a whole. It's not just about leadership. It's about how we relate to each other, like on a basic level.
Right. And it makes us think about how this backward reality might be playing out in different places. Like, could it be part of why certain voices get silenced or why it's so hard to make progress on social justice issues?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, is this tendency to just label anyone who speaks up as, the problem? Is it happening way more than we realize? But the text, it doesn't just point that out. It also kind of suggests that we can, actually change things, that we can, be different, be better.
Yeah, that's the encouraging part of all this, isn't it? It's not just about, complaining about how messed up things are, but about figuring out how to build a world where people actually understand each other and care about each other.
Okay, so where do we start? How do we go from just, understanding these ideas to actually using them in our own lives?
Well, if we think about Mike's experience as a leader, he really focuses on creating a certain kind of environment at work. He talks a lot about how important it is to make it clear from the very beginning that respect and inclusivity are non-negotiable.
And it sounds like that really paid off. It wasn't just about having some policy written down somewhere, but about actively building a culture where everyone felt safe and like they mattered.
Exactly. And that same idea, it can work anywhere, right? With our families and our communities, even online. It's about, putting in the effort to create spaces where people feel comfortable sharing, being themselves, even when they're, feeling vulnerable, and knowing that what they say, it actually matters.
So it's less about, these big dramatic things and more about the little things we do every day that kind of add up over time.
I think so. It starts with paying attention to how we talk and what we do, really listening when someone's talking, choosing to be kind instead of critical, and being willing to, call out behavior that just isn't respectful or inclusive.
And I bet this ties back to that whole Voxamhet thing too, right?
Yeah.
Being super aware of what people around us are needing and feeling.
For sure. It's about tuning in, not just to ourselves, but to those subtle cues and things people aren't saying, It's like trying to see the world from their point of view.
Like practicing empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that everyone has their own stuff going on, their own experiences.
Exactly. And approaching those differences with curiosity and compassion, not judgment. It's not always easy, It's something you have to work at your whole life, but it can really change how you relate to people and how you see the world.
It makes me think about those specific things Mike did as a leader. Staying late with his team, working right alongside them, being flexible about time off. It wasn't just talk, it was showing up for them, actually being there.
And that meant a lot, didn't it? It showed a level of caring and understanding that went way beyond just saying the right words. It's about living those values, in all those little interactions we have, whether it's helping out a coworker who's struggling, really listening to a friend who's going through a rough time, or just, choosing to encourage someone instead of criticizing them.
It's about being present, being supportive, and showing people that we really care. And that kind of brings us full circle to the core of what we've been talking about, seeing the strength in what we often think of as weakness.
Yeah, it's about flipping the script, recognizing that our experiences, even the tough ones, they shape who we are. They can make us more empathetic, more aware, and give us a depth of understanding that can be, really powerful, not just as leaders, but in every part of our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is that we all have the ability to be more empathetic, more aware, and more compassionate. It's a choice we make every single day, in the big moments and the small ones.
And those choices, even the little ones, they can have a ripple effect. They can help create a world where people feel seen, heard, and valued. A world where those who are brave enough to stand out, to challenge the way things are celebrated instead of, pushed aside.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Stökigt.nu's exploration of mental health and leadership. We hope this has given you some new things to think about and inspired you to keep exploring these ideas in your own life.